Today is a positive day because it is Marvel Champions' 5th birthday, which is amazing. I love this game. Obviously, I'm a bit biased. I make content for it. I really like it. I put so much time into this. And it's because it's really good. And I could list a lot more than 10 reasons for why you should play Marvel Champions. But we've got 10 really good reasons I'm excited to talk about. And I'm going to stop rambling now so we can get into it. I will just say, I'm going to phrase this video as if no one had, heard of Marvel Champions before, make it a bit new player friendly, but hopefully veteran players will still enjoy this as well. Up first, I want to talk about iconic heroes. I think this is the big draw to play Marvel Champions. You get to be one of the awesome Marvel heroes doing awesome things. You can play Spider-Man or Captain America, or you can have them both at the same table in multiplayer. You can have Wolverine join in. Spider-Man and Wolverine, that's an awesome combo. But guess what? You could have Groot and Magneto, which is ridiculous. And obviously Magneto isn't quite out yet, but he's just around the corner, and that is amazing. What kind of game can you do all this in all these different combinations with all this expression? And it's just really cool. I think it feels really fun to, step into their shoes, and that's a great starting point for a card game. The next point might sound similar to this, but I think it evokes different emotion. So what's the difference between, getting iconic heroes and iconic villains in the game? Isn't this just, character recognition? Oh, I know that guy. That's my comic character I like. Well, yes, in that regard. But I think the emotion you get, the feeling of taking on some of these big villains, that you've seen, in comics or TV, movies for years, whatever. I think that's different. You are up against Thanos, and that's very different to I Am Spider-Man. It's similar, but it's different. And you can take any of those Marvel heroes, whether they are the thematically appropriate hero to fight the villain or not, and just take them up against, the villains. So I could have Spider-Man against Green Goblin, which makes sense. Or I could just have Spider-Man against Magneto. Why not? You can do anything in this game, and I think the possibility is amazing, but just the ability to go and take on all these iconic villains is a really fun challenge that I love. Marvel Champions is thematic, so not only can you play as these iconic characters, but you really can feel like them. You've got Wolverine, who will heal every turn. Captain America has his shield toss card, and it will bounce between characters and actually come back to your hand. Like the hand of cards you have, it's really good. The Hawkeye ally shoots arrows. Rogue can, touch people, take their powers, and then Mysterio messes with your deck, which means when you're drawing cards, it could be bad for you. He makes you doubt yourself. That's really, really thematic. And what's really impressive is that Marvel Champions is an accessible game, baseline. There's a lot of complex stuff you can do with it. It has a lot of depth. It's really fun, but they do it with so few pieces that it's really impressive. So obviously, you could say there are more thematic games out there, but there's no map. You don't move any little pieces to represent movement in that regard. There's no range, and they still make it really like you feel like the characters. And I think that's a testament to the designers and one of the game's unspoken strengths, because a lot of people will talk about, I make this thematic deck, I put these cool characters or cards which suit this character, but the character's baseline really good in general, really good. The game is also really good at making you feel awesome. I'm going for a lot of more of a feeling start to the video, I suppose. But I really do think the game makes you feel awesome. It has cards like Gamma Slam if you're She-Hulk, and you just get to do up to 15 damage. Avengers Assemble, get your whole, squad of, heroes just going crazy. You can just be Spider-Man and kick someone in the face for 8 damage with swinging web kick. They're really satisfying. Got a bit more technical, kind of, not death by 1,000 cuts, but, definitely you're going to have to do multiple things on your turn to get full value out of it, but repurpose can set up these cool combos that are really fun if you can line it up. And then Hone Technique, which I'm not going to explain for new players right here, but veteran players, that's a card which really helps you pack a punch. And, a turn never goes by in Marvel Champions where, you feel like you didn't have an impact, or at least very rarely, it's always something happening, and that's really great. And, sometimes the thing that's happening is particularly spectacular. So I talked a couple of points ago that Marvel Champions is, kind of accessible. It can make you, it shows a lot of theme through very few, moving parts that it has to manipulate, and that's really impressive. If you want to set up a game of Marvel Champions, well, you pick the villain, and you have the villain card, maybe Rhino, like you can see on the screen. You put down their main scheme, like the break-in, which you can see on the screen, and then you get their encounter cards. You put in the standard set, a modular set that it recommends. You have a stack of cards, and that's most of it done, because then you just need your hero. You need to build a deck, and that's it. You play. And if you keep a few decks built, you can swap it out really easy, swap the villains out pretty easy. It's a very easy game to get down on the table. If you're playing solo, they go pretty quick. You can get a few games in usually, and that's amazing. But also, it's kind of easy to play in terms of, the introductory skill level needed, because there's kind of a flow to the game that, might be tricky at first, but really, characters, you've got a card like Uppercut in the core set, just says deal 5 damage. You get a lot more complicated, and we'll talk about that later. The game has a lot of depth, but you can start out simple. So if you're worried about it, if you're gonna start with an LCG, if you've never played a living card game before, this is a great one to do it, and the core set is so good. At number 5, the mechanics, and I'm gonna take this as a way to kind of express how much they can do despite so few components. No map, there's a couple of, you use counters represent damage and things, but really, they can do so much. So kind of on the opposite end, looking now more difficult, we've got a character called Magic who came in the most recent expansion, and she gets to play with the top card of her deck face up. We've then got other cards which can interact with the top card of her deck, because she knows what it is, she's guaranteed to get these bonuses. But once per phase, you can play the card that is on top of your deck. So now you have cards which will discard the top of your deck for a bonus, but you can play a card on top of your deck once. So you have to choose, do I go for it now, or do I discard it and hope what I find underneath is going to be better and play that one instead? Hopefully that makes sense. You then can, do things like scrying, which can let you look and move cards around there. You get cards which benefit you if they're discarded from the top of your deck, which scrying can do, which those allies we saw on the screen can do. This probably isn't going to make a lot of sense if you're a new player or someone just interested in the game, but really, you can do a lot with Magic. The depth gets kind of crazy, especially when you take her Limbo support card into account. Lets you move cards from your hand on top of your deck. You can do all sorts of crazy combos. It's really fun. But that's just one, the more complicated aspect of the game, because you can just play Spider-Man. What's his ability? Well, when he gets attacked, he draws a card. Let's look at one of his cards. What kind of crazy things does that do, like Limbo? Well, it's 8 damage. We talked about this card earlier, Swinging Web Kick. The barrier to entry is quite low, but the depth is quite far. And this is shown in an even more amazing way, I think, with Spider-Man here. Because Spider-Man, even for a veteran character, although I just made him seem quite easy, can still be really, really engaging. I still really love playing Spider-Man. And, we've got people like Web Warrior Fanatic who play the hardest villains in the game a lot. Go-to is Spider-Man. He built his whole channel on Spider-Man, which is pretty crazy. So the mechanics allow for so much depth and difference in difficulty in terms of, getting to grips with the game, learning, and how much you want to experience it. It has a lot to offer, despite, there's no map. There's just cards and effects, and I think it's so good. Deck building is a big topic, and I was once known mostly as a deck builder. I really want to go into depth here, but all I'll say is Black Panther is a character from the core set that a lot of you guys will know, and a lot of people consider this guy not to have many options in deck building. He's spoken down a lot because of that, and this is a positive video, so guess what? I disagree. I genuinely disagree. I think Black Panther has a surprising amount of options, and I'm just going to highlight one in one aspect, and an aspect is kind of what's like your class you choose at the start of when you're building a deck, you build into one of the aspects, and aggression has red cards, so let's look at aggression. For aggression, we have Lock and Load, helps him get weapons, and he has a couple of weapons built into his cards already. He'll always have some weapons around, like Panther Claws. We've got Fusillade, which lets you exhaust a weapon, which again, he's always going to kind of have around, and you get to deal damage. That works really well for Black Panther. But guess what? That little card called Hone Technique I talked about earlier, well, that card can boost the damage of Fusillade, and it requires certain resources, which is to do with the way you spend money. It's the cards, it's the bottom little icon of them. But long story short, it wants 2 of a specific type to really get going, and Black Panther has that because he has a resource card with 2 wild resources, which can be anything. So he can very easily get the required resources for this, and this resource card also happens to pay the perfect amount towards Fusillade. If you don't understand any of this, take my word for it. It's very fun, very good. Probably better in multiplayer than solo, but again, the deck building, having differences at different player count adds a lot of depth. I really like it. And to take Black Panther out of this, we could look at him in all the different aspects with various different cards that I think really suit him for deck building. Muster Courage, maybe it's better for expert mode for multiplayer, but most of these I think are really interesting at all different player counts, and I think he can do them really well. There's a lot of variety if you go looking for it with old cards and new cards. We have cards here from like the first wave and also cards that have just released on screen. It's really good. And the deck building like this, the way the cards are released or work with older heroes, really adds a significant amount of value, I think, to whatever you're getting. These original characters are going to last forever. But the new packs you're getting are going to, help whatever amount of other content you have for the game. It's really good. Something I think Marvel Champions does well is that it's really modular. Not only can you play any of the heroes, from any of the four main aspects, you can, change the difficulty in the scenarios, with the different villains you want to fight. For, basic level, you kind of have, standard mode and then expert mode, but then you can take it further. Did you know there is skirmish mode and heroic mode? With skirmish mode being you just fight one of the villain stages instead of two, and heroic mode being pain and suffering. To be serious, you basically get two encounter cards instead of one, which means two bad things happen instead of one, and that's as bad as it sounds. It's double the bad, and it can be pretty tough. But some people absolutely love it. We also have different standard sets, and if you haven't played the game before, this won't make much sense. But every time you play a scenario, you include a standard set. So having this variety, they have different effects, different actual difficulty levels within the standard difficulty, because trust me, standard 2, total annihilation is not something they're joking about. It's really fun. We have so many ways to change things up. And lastly, of course, modular sets. If people have played before, you'll understand. But every scenario pretty much will ask for at least one modular set, and you can change it up. And the core set comes with three. It comes with a bunch. There's 3 of them on the screen right now, and they are so different in terms of what they're doing. MODOK here, very, very scary. Hydra Bomber from Bomb Scare. Yeah, very chill. You can really change up the difficulty you want from scenarios, but also the theme and different things like that. It's really, really good. I haven't played another card game, definitely not an LCG style game, that lets you do so much and change it up so greatly. And obviously that's enhanced by 5 years of content, but that's where we are, and it's really good. I'm really happy with it. At number 2, we have the community, and shoutouts to community member Web Warrior Fanatic. He once did a video a little bit similar to this. I actually spoke to him before I made this video because I wanted to make sure he was okay with it. It wasn't, like a super exclusive idea. But I remember on his video, this was one of the things he had on there, and thinking about it, yeah, the community for Marvel Champions is really, really good. There are a bunch of Discord servers, you can go on Reddit, you go anywhere. If you need help with the game, you just have to ask. Someone's going to answer. Someone is always ready to help, and that's fantastic. But there's also people to discuss the game with, learn and different things like this. And there's also the content creator community. I don't know if I want to shout anyone out because there's so many names. I could say the big names, but they don't really need the shout outs. I could say the small names, but it's so many, it'd be picking favorites. I've got a video called Everyone's Favorite Villains, which shows 20 different creators of. Check that out if you're looking to find people from the community to watch. But there's way more out there. Look around for them. They're amazing. It's really good. It's crazy. We have so many creators, especially so many dedicated ones for a game, of this kind of size. It's like a known game. You're going to find it in board game shops and so on, but it's not exactly like super mainstream. And we have a lot of good creators for it. It's something I feel like we need to be more grateful for and appreciate. The last point I want to bring for you guys today is self-expression in Marvel Champions. I said on a recent podcast, I don't even remember if it's out yet or not, but I was talking about how in Marvel Champions, you can really express yourself, you can really show creativity, and you can still do really well in the scenarios. Obviously, if you're playing the most difficult scenario on the most difficult difficulty, you might need to go into efficiency and, the things that are really good. But for the most villains, even on expert, once get a good understanding and really get the flow of the game, you can go for creative strategies and win, and that's awesome. And people will disagree on how to play a character, although they'll have their own style to apply to that character. Miss Marvel, for example, some people swear by protection for her. I'm not a big fan. I prefer justice or aggression, but you can totally do whatever. Star-Lord is in some ways built as a rush character. He's known as one of the best rush characters in the game, but there are so many effective ways to build him, to play at a regular tempo, whereas rush is going really fast, trying to win immediately, all in on the damage. You can do whatever. You can do some sort of ally sort of whiteboards of different characters helping him that join the Guardians. It's super, super fun. Nightcrawler's a recent character, and there was some discussion in my Discord server about what his least valuable card was. and we got a few different answers, and they were all very different to mine. And that's really fun, though. We have different styles, we put different value on different cards, and you can do so much more than this. The depth of that goes beyond the scope I'm willing to, like, put into this video here, but you can do a lot, and I love it, and it keeps me coming back again and again. And the secret, 11th reason is replayability. And this was actually something I heard on the Winning Hand podcast. I'll shout them out because that's where I heard it. Someone on, I think, Board Game Geek had said Marvel Champions is one of the most replayable games out there. And, we have all these different heroes that can go up against all these different villains. There's so many different possibilities. We have like 55 heroes, and I want to say 42 villains right now, thereabouts. That's so many combinations before you even consider there are technically five different aspects you can play all those characters in. The villains can have, there's almost 100 modular sets that you can alter them with, that you can put into basically any scenario. There's infinite possibilities, and that's before we even get into the individual cards. You put, a full deck has to have 40 cards. 15 are generally, preset for that hero, but then you add 25 of your own onto that. The replayability is crazy, but the scope within that to express yourself, not just within how you use the characters or build the decks, but how you choose to play on whatever difficulty or what villains you like, whether it's, the difficulty of the villain baseline or the style of the villain or just the theme. You can play how you want to play. To kind of slightly misquote the designer, Caleb, they're your cards, play with them how you want, and you really can do that in so many ways. So those are my 10 reasons why you should play Marvel Champions. Happy birthday to Marvel Champions. 5 amazing years. Hopefully we get 5 amazing more at least. There's so many heroes and villains and things. They have really barely begun to scrape the surface when you look at it. I did some prep for a video recently. I came to like 32 heroes I still wanted, and that was restraining myself to like 4 per superhero team. So tons and tons out there. If you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe, whatever. It's all super helpful, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.